Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into something I think pretty special. We're going to be looking at first love letters.
Ooh.
Why they're so significant and how they're seen in different cultures around the world.
Yeah, it sounds romantic.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll even touch on some tips for writing one, if you ever feel inspired.
Okay, I like that.
Our main source today is an episode from the Learn English with Love podcast, which is full of personal stories and vocabulary all about, love letters.
Makes sense. So where do we even begin with something as, profound as first love letters? I mean, they're more than just like cute gestures, right? They feel like a big step.
Yeah.
Emotionally, it's often the first time we try to express like really deep feelings of love in a way that's, more permanent, more real.
Totally. It's not just about saying I love you for the first time either. I mean, in the podcast, the host talked about this super simple note she got from her high school crush. It just said, I like you more than you know. But even something that short completely changed how they interacted.
Wow, so it's not even about like a big dramatic declaration. It's more about putting your feelings out there no matter how.
I think so, yeah.
It's about vulnerability, right? Like you said, a big step. That I like you note is small, but it's still putting your heart on the line.
Definitely. And the podcast guest also talked about spending like hours writing a letter to someone they had a crush on in college.
Oh, wow. So there's effort involved too.
Yeah. Like they were really trying to put all their feelings into words, to really capture how it's this person meant to them.
It makes you think, is that vulnerability what makes these letters so powerful? Like, why do they stick with us sometimes for years and years, even if the relationship didn't work out?
It's true. You never forget that first time, putting your heart out there like that.
There's some psychology at play, too. I mean, studies show that being open with someone, like you do in a love letter, really helps build intimacy. When we share those personal things, it builds trust and closeness. And in a first love letter, that feeling is even stronger because it's usually uncharted territory.
Makes sense. Like, here's this part of me, I'm trusting you with it.
Yeah.
So that vulnerability is huge. Okay, so we've got all this emotional weight.
Yeah.
But the podcast also talked about how culture plays a part, right? Like how different parts of the world see and write love letters.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's amazing how love letters are like this universal thing, but they take on such different forms depending on where you are in the world.
Right. It's still about love, but expressed in totally unique ways.
Exactly. For example, they talked about how in Japan, love letters tend to be super poetic and subtle.
Oh, interesting.
They often use a lot of nature imagery, reflecting those cultural values of respect and, not being too direct.
I love that. It's like how Japanese art often uses nature metaphors to convey emotion.
Exactly. It's like a culture-wide thing.
So instead of a bold, you are the sun and moon to me, a Japanese love letter might be more like, what? Like, my heart blooms like a cherry blossom when I think of you, or something.
Just something like that, yeah. It's more about evoking the feeling, painting a picture with words.
That's beautiful. So Japan is all subtle poetry, but then we have France, right?
Right.
Which, unsurprisingly, has a very specific way of doing things.
Of course. In France, it's all about drama and, a little bit of theatricality.
Makes sense.
They see love letters as like the ultimate romantic gesture. It really aligns with how much they value grand gestures of love,
Okay, so picture this. A handwritten letter, delivered by hand, maybe with a single red rose.
Exactly. That's the French way.
Oh, stop, I'm melting. Okay, so we've got Japan, France. What about Italy? They were in the podcast too, right?
Oh, yeah. Italy's more about passion and those like raw in the moment feelings.
So less planning, more like a burst of emotions onto the page.
Pretty much. It's about celebrating love itself, expressing it with really vivid language.
It's amazing how these approaches are all so different, even though it's the same basic act. Writing about love.
Yeah.
Makes you think about how your own culture might shape how you write a love letter, What feels natural, what feels right.
It definitely does. And speaking of all these traditions, it brings up a really interesting question, like with technology and how we communicate today.
Yeah.
How has that impacted our relationship with love letters? Are they even still a thing? It's tricky, right? I mean, we've gone from handwritten letters to, mostly texts and emails.
It's so easy now.
But the podcast actually had some thoughts on that.
Oh, really? What did they say?
Well, they said that while modern communication is super convenient,
Totally agree with that.
it often lacks like the permanence of a physical letter and the anticipation too, Imagine waiting days, even weeks for a reply to your heartfelt letter.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely something about that waiting, that wondering if they feel the same.
Exactly. You don't get that with instant messages.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I remember checking the mailbox like a million times a day, hoping for a letter.
I bet. But even though we don't write them as much anymore,
Right.
do you think handwritten letters still have a special place? Like for those really important moments?
I do, yeah. They're like
Yeah.
a symbol of effort,
Yeah.
that someone cared enough to slow down and really express themselves.
I think so too. It says something like, you're worth more than a quick text.
Exactly. And the podcast had a whole segment on writing them.
Oh, right. Like
Yeah.
tips and advice.
Yeah. They started with the introduction, like how to set the mood.
Oh, that's important.
Yeah. They said to go beyond a plain dear name and make it more personal.
Interesting. Like, what did they suggest?
They said try using terms of endearment, like my dearest, or to the one who holds my heart, things like that.
Oh, wow. That's way more romantic, right?
Totally. And then for expressing your feelings.
Okay, the heart of the matter.
Exactly. They said don't just say, I love you.
Really? What should you say instead?
They said focus on how the person makes you feel, like what qualities you adore, how they make your life better.
Show, don't tell.
Exactly. The podcast gave this example. Instead of you're kind, try something like your kindness makes me believe in the good in the world.
Oh, I see. It's more powerful, like you really see them.
Right. And they talked about using vivid language.
Like metaphors and things.
Yeah, to create a more like memorable experience for the reader.
Interesting. So instead of I'm happy when I'm with you, it could be being with you makes my heart sing or something.
Uh-huh. Well, maybe not that cheesy.
Okay, maybe tone it down a bit. But the point is to be creative and expressive.
Exactly. Find those ways to make your feelings come alive.
Did they say anything about cliches?
Yeah, they said be careful with those.
Makes sense. It can sound insincere if it's all stuff you've heard before.
Totally. It needs to be genuine, from your heart.
Oh, they also talked about the ending, right? Like how to wrap things up.
They did. They said to end with warmth and sincerity.
So like reiterating what you've already said.
Yeah, but like a short and sweet way of reinforcing those feelings.
Got it. So something classic like forever yours or with all my love would work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Simple but effective. Now, remember we talked about technology earlier?
Right, the whole texts versus letters thing.
Yeah, the podcast actually found that people still value handwritten letters even today.
Even with all the instant messaging and stuff.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
I think it goes back to effort, you know? A letter is something physical.
Yeah?
You can hold it, reread it. It's more meaningful than a quick text.
You're right. It's like a little piece of someone's heart, you know?
Yeah.
You can feel the emotions woven into the words.
It engages more senses too, right? It's not just words on a screen. There's the paper, the handwriting.
Maybe even a scent?
Exactly. It's a richer experience. All those elements add to the emotional impact.
And the time it takes to write. That says something too.
It says you're worth slowing down for. You're worth the effort.
It's like a gift.
Yeah. And receiving a handwritten letter, there's something special about that too, right?
Absolutely. It feels personal, like a treasure you want to keep forever.
It's like a ritual, unfolding the paper, taking in every word.
You're not just reading it, you're experiencing it.
It's beautiful.
The podcast also mentioned common phrases used in love letters from all over.
Oh, yeah. Like, even though languages are different, some feelings are universal.
Exactly. Like, I think of you constantly. Such a simple phrase.
But so powerful, right? It means they're always on your mind.
Exactly. Or how about, you mean the world to me?
Wow, that's a big one. It's saying they're incredibly important to you.
It is. And then there's the classic, I can't imagine my life without you.
Oh, that's a serious declaration. It's like saying they've become part of you.
It's amazing how these phrases work across languages.
They really do. It shows that love is something we all feel no matter where we're from.
Exactly. The podcast also had advice for people writing love letters, especially if English isn't their first language.
That's helpful. What did they suggest?
They said to use really vivid language, like to paint a picture with your words.
Oh, right. Make it descriptive.
Yeah. Instead of just saying, I like your eyes, you could say, your eyes sparkle like 1,000 stars or something.
Okay, maybe a bit much. But I get it. Be more creative.
Exactly. It's about using those metaphors and similes.
Didn't they talk about idioms, too?
They did. Like that heart-singing one we talked about.
Oh, right. Using those can add more depth and personality to the letter.
But they said to use them carefully, make sure they fit your voice and relationship.
That makes sense. You don't want it to sound forced.
And remember that they said to focus on specific memories.
Yeah. Don't just say you love them, show them how with actual examples.
Right. Like describe a special moment you shared or something they did that touched you.
That makes it so much more personal, right? Like you're reliving those memories together.
Exactly. And lastly, they warned against too many cliches.
Oh, right. Keep it original.
Yeah, express yourself in your own unique way.
So it's truly authentic, your own words and feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, with all this talk about love letters, I kind of want to go back and read some old ones, maybe even write one.
It's inspiring, isn't it? To think about the power of those words and how they can create lasting memories.
It is. And speaking of memories, maybe it's time we moved on to the emotional side of receiving a first love letter.
Yeah, good idea. What makes that experience so special? What do you think?
It's hard to pinpoint,
Yeah.
There's not just one thing that makes it so special.
Yeah, it's like all these things come together.
Like a perfect mix of, well, everything.
Exactly. I mean, first, there's that feeling of being seen, Like, especially when you're young and you're feeling all these intense emotions.
Yeah.
Getting a love letter, especially if you weren't expecting it, is like someone saying, hey, I see you, and I really like what I see. It's a huge boost, especially when you're still figuring yourself out.
It's like it confirms those feelings,
Yeah.
Like, oh, I am lovable. I am worthy of this.
Exactly. And it's not just the words themselves. It's the fact that it's a letter. In this day and age, it's so unexpected.
Oh, definitely. Like in a world of instant everything, a letter feels so thoughtful.
Totally. It's like a secret between just the two of you.
And that adds to the whole experience, right? It's like this intimate moment that no one else is part of.
Exactly. It's a different kind of connection.
And letters give you the space to say things you might not be able to say face to face,
Oh, definitely. It's like you can really pour your heart out without being interrupted or anything.
Right. It's a safe space for all those feelings.
It's like a peek into their soul, Their most private thoughts and feelings, just for you.
And for the person receiving it, it's like a gift, right? Something to keep and reread whenever you need to remember how special you are.
It really is. It's like a time capsule of emotion, Frozen in time.
Capturing that exact moment and how they felt about you.
And you can revisit it over and over.
I love that. It's like a tangible reminder of your connection.
And even if the relationship doesn't last, which, let's face it, a lot of first loves don't.
Yeah, that's true.
Those letters can still teach us a lot about ourselves.
Oh, how so?
Well, like, you can see how much you've grown since then, How your idea of love has changed.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like you can track your own evolution through those letters.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even those relationships that don't work out still play a part in shaping who we are.
It's all part of the journey, right?
Exactly. And it's amazing to think that even though the way we communicate has changed so much.
Right. From handwritten letters to texts and emails and everything in between.
Exactly. That need to connect, to express our deepest feelings, that's something that hasn't changed.
It really hasn't. And in a world that feels so digital, so fast-paced,
Yeah.
those handwritten love letters, they remind us to slow down, to really connect.
They're a reminder that some things are worth taking the time for.
You're right. So to our listeners, whether you've received a love letter or maybe you're thinking about writing one,
Oh, I hope so.
remember, in this world of instant everything, there's something truly magical about putting your heart into words, onto paper.
It's a beautiful act.
It really is. It takes courage and it creates something that will last.
And isn't that what matters? To connect, to express ourselves, to leave a little bit of our love out in the world.
Beautifully said. So until next time, keep your hearts open and your pens ready. You never know when inspiration might strike.